Hey guys, this is Balu and today in this tutorial I will show how you can create your first visual effects video in Blender easily. So hope you guys will find the video useful, and without any further delay, let's start today's session. So here I'm using this footage which I got from Pexels. Download link in the description if you want to use the same. And also here we need to install some scripts in order to export tracking data from After Effects to Blender. So here I will leave a link in the description for these pages. So here this is for After Effects. You can say this is export composition data to JSON. So come to this page, click on this download raw file, it will be downloaded. Later come to this page, this is for Blender, click on this download option, it will be downloaded. Now let's see how we can install the scripts. Come to After Effects, go to this file option, scripts, click on this install script file and locate the file. So this is the file which we have downloaded, and let us select it. So once the script is installed, restart After Effects. Now come to Blender. Here I will show you how to install that add-on. So go to this edit, preferences, add-ons, and click on this install. Select the file. You can see this is import composition to Blender. Select it and install. So it will be installed in Blender also. So now let's move to After Effects. So here we got this footage, right? So you can see this got some camera movements and the perspective change. So in order to place 3D elements in this kind of footage, first we need to track the footage. Being selected of footage, go to this window, enable tracker, so that we get the tracker panel. So here it is not there. So let's come to this window and enable tracker. So now you can see we got this tracker panel, right? So being selected our footage, simply click on this track camera. So it starts to analyze our footage and gives us some tracking points when it is done. So here the tracking is done and we got some track points here. Let's increase the track point size. So here you can see we got the track points, right? So first of all, come to this advanced options and look for this average error value. So here the average error value is of 0.4 pixels, which is okay. Anything less than 1 pixels is fine. And by any chance if this average error value is more, you can click on this detailed analysis option. It will track the footage once again and gives us a lot more track points, which may reduce the error value. So here this value is fine. So I will select bunch of track points here. So let's select these track points, hold left mouse click and let's select these track points here. Now right click, create solid and camera. So this will create a track solid here. So come to the starting frame, press S and increase the scaling so that it is visible clearly. So now if I play this, you can see we got our tracking solid staying in its position and also following the camera movements. So if you want to rotate this one so as to match the perspective or the scene, you can do that. So press R and we can rotate it accordingly. So I think, yeah, this is fine. So now we need to export this tracking data from After Effects to Blender. So here we will be using scripts. So let's see how we can do that. So come to the starting frame, select this track solid and track camera, go to this file option, come to the scripts and select this export composition data. So here we need to select a location where to save the file. So here I will give a random number and simply click on this export option. So now the tracking data is exported into the JSON file. So now if you want, you can close this After Effects and open Blender. So here we are in Blender and I am using 4.1 version. Now let's delete this default scene by pressing A on the keyboard and delete. Now let's import the tracking data which we got from After Effects. So go to this file option, import, select this After Effects composition data and locate the file. So here is the file and import A. So here you can see we got some keyframes here. So let's come to the starting frame. So here if we observe, you can see the keyframes are starting from 0, whereas our timeline is starting from 1, right? So we need to move these keyframes a bit. So press A on the keyboard to select all the keyframes, press G and move 1 frame backward. This is because After Effects timeline starts from 0, Blender timeline starts from 1. So for that reason we are moving this 1 frame backward. And here if we see, we got our camera and also our track solid. So let's place this track solid onto the grid here. So here we can't select both the objects and move it randomly. It may mess up the tracking data. So for that, first we need to create an empty and later we need to parent camera and track solid to that empty. So let's do that. So first of all, let's select the camera, Shift S, cursor to selected. So we got our cursor on the camera. So now go to this add empty. Let's add this plane axis. let's increase the scaling of this axis. So now we need to parent this camera to this axis empty. So here we need to select the camera axis. Don't select the camera, we need to select the camera axis where we got the tracking data, right? We need to select that axis. Now hold shift key and select this empty. Now control P, P for pen, and select this object keep transform. So now we need to parent this track solid to this empty. So select the track solid, hold shift key, select the empty, control P, object keep transform. So now we can move this scene using the empty only. So select the empty here, press 7 for top view. So let's reduce the scaling a bit. So press S and reduce the scaling here. So I think this much is fine. Now let's rotate this. So hold control key and rotate. Okay, now let's bring our track solid at the center. So we got our track solid here. Now press 1 for front view and let's rotate this. So let's select this and let's rotate this here. So basically we are trying to make this plane in a straight line. So here you can see we got this in straight line, and now let's move this. So yeah, so I think this is fine. So now press 0 to see through camera. So here we got our track solid and also the plane is on the grid. So here let's add our footage. So select the camera here, select the camera, come to this camera options, scroll down, enable this background images, expand this one, add image. So select this movie clip since we are using movie clip and open. So look at the file. So here I got the footage and open clip. So we got the footage, right? So now let's increase the opacity, and first of all let's change the color to standard. So change this to standard, we get the true colors here, and yeah, I think this is fine. So now if I play this, we can say we got our tracking solid onto the grid and our tracking is also looking perfect. So first of all let's select the frames here. So here let's select the axis, camera axis. Okay, so let's adjust the scene here. So let's make the last frame like 219. Okay, so we got the time length. So press 0. So now we got our scene ready. So let's increase the scaling of the track solid. Press tab key for edit mode. Let's select the edge here. Now let's move the edge in this side, and let's select this edge in this way, and let's move the edge here. So now we got our scene ready. So now let's add our 3D elements. So here I will be using this Blender kit to get the models, and by the way Blender kit is free to download. So here I will search for bowl and I will be using this bowl, or else let me use this bowl. Simply click on the image and it will be loaded in the scene. So here I think where is the bowl? So we got the bowl but it is too small. So let's right click, select objects, press S and increase the scale. So here you can see we got the bowl. Okay, it is placed here, right? Okay, press 0. Let's increase the scaling a bit and just place this just above to the. So we got bowl in the scene. Now let's add some candy in bowl. So for that again I will use this Blender kit. So I will search as candy, and from here I will select this one. So select it and it will be loaded. So here we got that one. Right click, select object, let's place this here. This is very small. So right click, select objects, press S and increase the scaling. So here you can see we got the candy and it is parented to this empty. So first of all let's clear the parent here. So select the empty, Alt P, clear and keep transform. In the same way select the candy, Alt P, control and keep transform. Again select this, Alt P, control and keep transform. So now we can delete this empty, and also I will delete this one. We need only this candy here. Okay, and for simulations we have to apply the scaling options. So if I press on the keyboard, you can see we got the scaling XYZ to 63, right? We need to make this 111. So for that go to this object, apply scale. So for simulations this is important. Let's select the bowl here. Bowl also scaling is very large. So go to this object, apply scale. So let's select the plane here, object, apply scale. Okay, so for simulations make sure to apply the scaling options. So press 0, So first of all, I will place this, let be on the starting frame here. So first of all, I will place this above to the scene. Okay, so I think this is fine. So now let's add rigid body properties onto this candy. So go to this physics property, apply rigid body. So type, let it be active, and mass, let it be 1 kg, and shape, change this to mesh option, and come to this sensitivity option, and margin, reduce this to 0.01. Now if I play this, the candy will fall down, but it will not interact with the bowl. That is because there is no rigid body property applied onto this bowl. So select the bowl once again, apply rigid body, but this time we will be using this as passive because we want this candy to be interacting with the bowl. Let the default setting be like this, and collision margin I will reduce this to 0.01. So now if I play this, you can say the candy is falling down, but it is not falling inside the bowl. So in these cases, just play with the value of the shape option. So by default the shape is convex hull, right? So let's change this to mesh, and let's check this once again. So now you can see the candy is falling inside the bowl. So let's increase the friction value of this bowl and also friction value for this candy. So let's save the project, Ctrl S. So we got the file saved. So now let's duplicate the candy, press 7 for top view. Let's see whether it is here only. Okay, so let's place the candy here. So shift D, press Y, and place this in Y axis. Now let's select both the candies, place them here. Shift D, press X, and place the candy here. So this much is fine. So now if I play this, all the candies will be falling inside the bowl. Nice. So here you can use array modifier to get the duplicate copies, but here I will be using the native method. So select all the candies, shift D, press Z, and place them in Z axis here. Okay, so after that shift R to repeat the last action. So I think these many candies are fine. Let's save the project. So here all the candies are looking the same way. So let's add some randomness. So select all the candies, come to the select option, come to this object, transform, and enable this randomize transform. After that expand this option here, and from here we can change the rotation value. So here you can see we got some randomness. So yeah, I think let it be here. Let's add Y randomness and see. So make sure these candies are not touching one another. So there should be gap between the candies. So I think this is fine. So now if I play this, all the candies will be falling inside the bowl. So now you can see we got all the candies inside the bowl. So I think I need to increase the number. So I will select all the candies once again, shift D, and I will place them here. Okay. So yeah, I think this is fine. Now let's increase the size of this plane. So press tab key for edit mode. Let's select the edge here once again, and again let's select the edge. Move it in Y axis. So right now these candies will not interact with the plane, so we need to add rigid body property for this plane also. So select the plane, add rigid body, type, change it to passive, and shape, let it be convex hull, and surface response friction I will increase this to 1, enable this collision margin, and let's reduce the collision margin to 0.01. So I think this is fine. And again I will add another object onto this plane, milk packet. I will add a random thing here. So I will search for milk packet here, and I will add this one. So simply click on the image, it will be loaded. So we got that milk packet, right click and select object, press S and increase the scaling. So we got empty for that one. So let's increase the scaling here. Let's place this S side. So let's place this just above to the plane. And also we need to apply the scaling option for this also. Okay, the scaling is set to 1 only. If the scaling is not set to 1, go to this object, apply scale. Okay, so for this box also we need to apply the rigid body so that these candies will interact with the box. So select the box here, add rigid body, go to this active and make it passive object, and friction increase this to 1, and collision margin I will change this to 0.01. So I think this much is fine. So let's see through camera. So now if I play this, you can see our candies are falling into the bowl. So we need to bake the simulation here. So in order to bake the simulation, come to this scene properties, expand this rigid body world. So come to this catchy option. So if you want to reduce the simulation speed, you can do that. So if I reduce this to 0.5, the simulation speed will be reduced. If I change this to 2, the simulation speed will be fast, and if I set to 1, it will be default. So depending upon the choice, you can play with the value of the speed. So here simulation starting and end frame we can choose. So this is timeline's frame rate, right? The timeline frame rate is of 1 to 219, and here this is for simulation. So here the timeline is from 1 to 219 frames, whereas our simulation is 1 to 250. So I will reduce this to 219 only, and after that simply click on this bake option. So here the bake is done, and if I play this now, you can see we got all the candies falling inside the bowl and few candies are falling outside. So I think this is fine. So now let's move on to this render viewport here. So here the scene is looking dark because there is no light in the scene. So first of all, let's add an HDRA. So come to this world properties, click on this color, add environment texture, and from here we can load any HDRA. So here I got this HDRA from Polyheaven. So open. So I will select this HDRA and open image. So now you can see we got some light in the scene. And here come to this render settings, enable this ambient occlusion and distance. I will change this to 5, and let's enable the screen space reflections, refractions, and if you want to enable motion blur you can do that. So I'll enable motion blur here, and come to this film option and make this transparent so that we get only our models visible. So from here I will use this HDRA, select it and open image. So now you can see we got some light in the scene. Let's press N on the keyboard to close it. Now press 0 to see through camera. So now we got our scene ready. So here I will be using cycles engine. So let's change this to cycles, enable GPU compute. So now let's select the plane here. We need to make this a shadow catcher in order to cast shadows. So select the plane. So let's come out of the view. So select the plane here, come to this object properties, come to this visibility and enable the shadow catcher so that it casts the shadow here. So for bowl I will change the material to glass. So I will apply this glass material. So I think this is looking good. So now if I move to this render engine once again, so I got glass material applied onto this. So now let's check the shadows here. So now let's adjust the shadows. So here the shadows are falling backward, whereas in the scene the shadows are falling sideward. So now we need to rotate the shadows. So in order to rotate the shadows we need to rotate the HDRA. So for that go to the shading option here, and from here change this to world option. So here we got this HDRA, right? So let's move on to this render viewport. So here you can see we got the shadows, right? So let's enable our environment for time being. So let's disable this transparent option so that we can see the HDRA. So now let's adjust the shadow. So select this HDRA, press Ctrl plus T for node wrangler, and by the way if you are not enabled node wrangler, go to this edit option, preferences, in add-ons look for node NODE. So by default this node wrangler will be disabled. Enable it, save those preferences, and from here we can rotate the HDRA. So I will rotate this to 45, and let's see. No, I need to change this to -45. Okay, so now you can see we got the shadows in side direction. So now if I press 0 to see through camera, we got the shadows here, and now let's enable this transparent option. So now we can see we got our shadows facing in correct direction as that of in the scene. So now let's move on to the render settings. So let's come to this render settings here, and here I will be using cycles, and samples I will reduce this to 32, and noise threshold 0.1 is enough, and light paths I will reduce this to half, and I will reduce this to half. So these settings are to reduce the render time. If your device is capable, you can increase the maximum samples for better quality. So here I will use only 32 samples, and I think this is fine. So after that come to this output properties. So by default this is set to full HD. I will use this to full HD only. Enable this render region, crop to render region, and this frame rate we need to match with the footage frame rate. So here my footage frame rate is of 25, so I will set this to 25 frames. and frame start and end 1 to 219 is fine. If you want to increase depending upon the scene, you can increase this end frame value. So come to this output properties. Here we need to select a location where we can save the files. So here I have selected a folder to save the output files, and file format, let it be PNG, and make sure this RGBA is selected or else we won't get the alpha channel, and I think this is fine. So once these settings are done, go to this render and click on this render animation. So this renders in PNG sequence, that means with the transparent background we won't get the video visible in render. So once the PNG sequence is rendered, use any editing software to do compositing and color correction to get the final output. So in this way we can create this kind of CGI ads in Blender easily.